Hi guys, this week, I took a week off last week, wasn't well, but I'm back. Thank you for everyone who's been liking and subscribing and doing those things. I'm doing the thank yous up front. So thank you everybody. Watch it all the way to the end or as far as you can, because the longer you watch it, the more the magical algorithm will reward us and push this out to more people. Thank you in advance. I saw a question. Somebody said, how do I know if I should continue with the story that I have? Or am I wasting my time? Is it worth writing? Other people, he also said that when he shares it with people, they're unsure whether it's good or not. We're going to not worry about the quality. We're not going to worry about anything else. I came up with 3 things that you could use to assess a story to see whether it's worth continuing with that story. A rough checklist. We've quantified it, or I've quantified it into 3 things. And I'll tell you what they are, and then we will discuss them in a little bit further. If you've got any comments or you agree or disagree with this, throw it below. I'd love to hear what you've got to think. First one. Does the effort match the risk or threat of failure? Is the story believable within itself? This is something I go on about a little bit on this channel. But is the effort you have to take worth the outcome? If there's more effort than it takes, that might be a good comedy thing. I think it's Superbad. I don't know if I saw Superbad. The entire movie is about these young guys just trying to get a case of beer. A whole film. And everything they do is just about trying to get a case of beer. So that was a comedy film. Could you have a serious film where someone is putting out a huge amount of effort? They're changing their life. They're putting themselves at risk. They're putting relationships at risk for something that isn't that important to them. So it's the risk versus reward. How much effort are you putting in for something else? There's what they call a sunk cost fallacy. So you may even, if you can have one of those in your film, have someone call it out, where a person goes, oh, we've reached a point of no return. I've spent $1 million on this project. I may as well spend another 2 and see it through. Then I'll be in for 3. But if you know it's going to fail after 1 million, you lose. You lose that money and you pull out. You just cut your losses, as people say. So maybe the failure to cut their losses is the story. So, but you can't have a character who's doing a huge amount of effort and risk and destroying things and rebuilding things and putting themselves at harm for a goal that just isn't important. People will just look at that and go, oh, I can't be bothered watching this because I can't engage with that paradox of them spending all this effort for such a pointless thing, unless, of course, they're mentally ill. Then it's like, oh, I wonder what they're going to do because they're so unpredictable now. Becomes something different to engage with. Number 2, how big is the outcome? How big is the harm? So this it relates from the first one, it flows through. If you've got not a very big outcome, why are we watching the film? Do I care what happens for such a small stakes? Does it really worry me? As an audience member, as I'm reading it, what's the stakes in this? There's no real stakes. Why do I care? If you're going to say, oh, it's because he needs to have self-esteem, he wants to feel better about himself, show that. Show this self-esteem as bad. Perhaps have an opening scene where he's letting himself down, or where the audience could see where that's really a person who's got no self-esteem, they're letting themselves be degraded in that way. Now we can see the hunt for self-esteem. Suddenly self-esteem becomes important to the story itself. But if it's low stakes, a low stakes story, it's going to have low stakes action, it's going to have low stakes goals, there's better things out there to watch. There's not many low stakes films that are successful or very good stories. I can't think of a low stakes story where people are like, that was so good, I actually cared about them getting or him achieving the. Those things have to be comedy or quirky and alternative. They're very rarely a good film that are in a standard genre like drama, crime, sci-fi, fantasy, where the stakes are low. It has to be a weirder type universe where everyone overreacting over such low stakes makes sense. So the stakes have to be worth engaging with. Number 3. Does the action versus outcome, the first one, can that be related to by your audience, by the general person, by someone watching this film or reading your screenplay? Does it make sense to them? Could they see that in their life? So even when we talk about a big space opera, it will be relatable back to a human emotion, back to what we've all felt, to rescue someone, to save someone, to want to feel important in our lives. Then once we start going down there, we substitute that for the greater the big cause. I want to feel important, so I go off and join some rebel alliance. And now I'm starting to see how my actions can impact the universe. And I'm suddenly feeling this importance. I'm getting a bit addicted to this. I've become suicidal for this because I think I'm going to change the world. That's those sorts of stakes. Could people relate to that? Can they relate to heartache? Can they relate to loss? Can they relate to new love? The saving of a family member? Greed? Pushing against greed? Can your story not be directly related as in, yep, I've got a son and I've got a daughter and this movie's got a son and a daughter in it, I relate to that. No, not that sort of direct, oh look, it's a photocopy of me, even though people do like seeing themselves on screen. Is the emotional base making sense to me as that person? I see heaps of films where I go, that's not how I would react. That's silly. The one I think it's Norwegian or Swedish TV series called DNA. I'm going to spoil this, sorry. So if you're going to go watch it, leave now. But what happens is this policeman's daughter is taken because there's this ring of a religious organisation that takes children born to single parents, steals them and gives them to other families, adopts them to good Christian families. And one of these girls that has the baby taken mistakenly thinks that this policeman's daughter is her daughter, and she takes that baby. So for the next 4 or 5 years, he spends his life hunting down his daughter, and finally he finds her. He finds that she's now living in Norway or Sweden or Holland. She's living across the border. She's living somewhere else in Scandinavia, say. He meets the mum. The mum's lovely. They've got a lovely little life together. They like to go fishing the same way he likes to go fishing. And he goes back and sees his wife and goes, they've broken up now because of this trauma. He goes, oh, she's got a good mum. She seems to be happy. I'm going to leave her there. That wouldn't happen. That was the most ridiculous end I've ever seen. If you had lost your child for 4 or 5 years and you spent 4 or 5 years trying to get her back, suddenly because she's not in harm's way or that she was stolen by some honest mistake, that you're going to go, no, I won't be part of her life. She seems happy. That's good enough for me. That's all I've ever wanted. You want to see your kids grow. You want to have a relationship with your children. I know, because I do. I want to have a relationship with my kids. I have a good relationship with my kids. That was just silly. That had a broke it for me. Good show up to that point that it broke it. I couldn't relate to those feelings and emotions where I'd completely turn my back on parenthood. I would just forgive the person and forgo being part of my child's life because she seems happy enough. She's 4 or 5. She doesn't probably remember what happened, or she doesn't remember what happened. And when she's 15, she won't even remember what it was like being 4 or 5. She'll have a rough, vague notion. I can't think back. I'm 60 now, but I can't think back to when I'm 4 or 5. I sort of remember kindergarten because I've got photos and people tell me, but I can't remember back that far. So if she got her child back, weaned the other mother out of her life, and just kept going, she would be fine. She'd have a life. You'd have a life with your child. It would be fantastic. But this weird ending didn't relate to me, didn't relate to my wife, broke it for us. So make sure your story doesn't break that bond and relationship that you managed to build or you're trying to build. People have to be able to relate at an emotional level, in real world, as part of their community, and what they know to your story. Then to the harms and things that would happen would be a threat to them. The effort they would then take, would that effort they're going to have to spend relate to the task, relate to the goals, relate to the threats, relate to their life? This makes for a good story. If you can tick yes to those questions. Does the effort match the risk? Is the risk significant enough for people to actually take action? And does those actions relate to me? Does the story relate to me? Does it have some real world consequences? Those three things. If you can have those in a story, it's worth writing. Okay, t-shirt. I've got my black one on today. There's a link for that. 20% off writerduet. That's for you. I make no money out of that. And there is the books, Logline and Tools Not Rules, which is tools you can use as a writer, not how to write. It doesn't tell you what to do, when to do. It just gives you all the weapons you need to go to war against the story. And until next time, guys, keep writing. Bye.